All right, we are live. Everyone, welcome to GitOps Guide to the Galaxy. My name is Christian Hernandez. As you see, we are missing someone today. We're missing Chris Short. So unfortunately, I don't have a cool intro like Chris Short does. He's having internet issues. So we hope to have him back soon. Hopefully, Comcast can get out there at one point this week to help him out. But we are here. I am actually really happy to be joined by two people from Intuit, right? So we have Henrik and Alexander. I won't butcher you guys' last name. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. From Intuit, and we're here to talk about Argo, just like Argo CD, the Argo project in general. Get some cool background about how Intuit is using Argo CD and how they brought it into the open source community. So, Henrik, I'll let you introduce yourself first, and then we'll go with Alexander.
Okay, thanks, Christian. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Henrik Blixt. I'm a product manager at Intuit. I think my official title is product manager of platform and open source. So I'm the product manager responsible for Argo. So I deal with a lot of regular product management issues in how we use Argo internally, what features our internal customers need. But I'm also working a lot outbound with CNCF, with our partners like Red Hat, and figuring out how we take Argo and Argo projects to the next level, and how we work with the community to do that. So I come from a background in OpenStack. Please don't hold that against me.
Sorry, we'll pretend we didn't hear
that. There's some mixed feelings when in the cloud native world is say OpenStack. There's some very mixed feelings, but I had some good years from OpenStack, but now I'm here.
Cool. So, Alex, introduce yourself. What you do.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I usually prefer to go just by Alex M because my last name is non-pronounceable easily.
Well, I was going to try, but I was like, I don't know. I better let him say it.
Right, I can try. Yeah, it's Matyushentsev, which is long and strange. Right.
Okay.
I'm a principal software engineer at Intuit, and I also am a maintainer of Argo. As you might know, it's a set of projects. So, and basically I was involved with many of them, but most recently I'm working on Argo CD specifically, and I'm basically developing it, and I'm responsible for running it at Intuit. And so that's why I know a lot about scalability, challenges, and yeah, I'm happy to share what we've learned so far and help you use Argo CD.
Yeah, so what? Cool. Yeah, like actually one of the things that that a lot of people don't know is that Intuit actually was a customer. So like I think Alexander maybe would have a little bit more background about the acquisition, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, so I'll just kind of give an overview. But like actually Argo CD came from what was the company name? Applatix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually Intuit liked that product so much that they actually acquired. So okay, can you kind of go over just a little bit, or Henrik or Alexander, kind of how that all played out in kind of like the birth of Argo CD?
Yeah, and maybe I would even give Intuit a bit more credit. So yes, we got acquired and we bring in some Kubernetes knowledge into Intuit, but Argo CD actually was created at Intuit.
So it was born in Intuit. Nice.
Yeah. So it actually started a bit earlier. Intuit embarked on a modernization journey. Intuit has been around for a while, right? And there was a lot of legacy stuff, standard data centers. We ran into issues of engineers were moving too slow. There was just too much red tape and things that needed to happen to do new releases. Spend too much time managing hardware that's not really business critical to a software and a financial software company like us. Managing hardware is not in our core business. Yeah. so there was a modernization journey that started quite a bit before that, and it's part of that. They started looking at how do we increase developer velocity, how do we modernize our whole technology stack, and as part of that modernization is when they started looking at Applatix, and they at that point, like Alex said, had Argo Workflows, which is one of the other three projects. And then shortly thereafter, think this was about 3.5 years ago, Alex, that Applatix was acquired. And I think just a few months after, as the Applatix team and some more people at Intuit started building out the new platform, this modernization platform that we very thoughtfully named the modern SaaS platform. CD was born. So CD came out of that, I think, mid 2018, somewhere around there.
Seems like you know the better, better than me.
Yeah.
I can add a little bit about why it is even was created and what was our goals. So I think it's important. We were not trying to just create a new project for the sake of project creation, and we actually had a big kind of challenge. We were supposed to just onboard potentially thousands of developers with not so much of Kubernetes knowledge on Kubernetes, and that's why we were just trying to create a tool that would simplify it. That's it. And I think that really explains a lot of design decisions that were made with Argo CD. So basically, we knew that there is no way we can ask any team at Intuit to run a Kubernetes application to manage, Kubernetes configuration. We knew it's supposed to be, the simplest possible experience, and that's why Argo is it's a GitOps separator as a service. So you don't have to run anything to use it. You just open a URL, and then that's it. You basically can consume it. And it also explains why Argo CD has rich user interface. It's a way to save support team from a ton of questions. So in Argo UI specifically tries to highlight problems in your application. If your pods, let's say, not starting, we have big red icon, and it may even, eventually will get even bigger. This is so that developers, could just view that problem and immediately find answer of why, pod is failing, and don't bother. Basically, it's meant to scale a platform team, kind of. And replaces the part of work that platform team is doing to support application engineering teams.
And just to give you an idea of scale, I think when this started, I think Intuit, we had about 3,000 developers or thereabout, and like Alex said, virtually no Kubernetes experience. And today we have about 5,000 developers on this platform. It's fully on Kubernetes, all cloud native, and we closed our last data center, I think about 2 years ago. So this is fully public cloud, fully cloud native, 5,000 engineers. So it's been a pretty quick, or a very quick shift, I would say, into using this new platform and migrating off of closing our old data center. So that's why it was extremely important, just like Alex said, to make sure that this could be picked up without needing a year or two of training.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's kind of like, well, what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like you had this need, and so well, let's just build a tool that is very easy to use. That's actually one of the things I really, really loved about Argo when I first started working with Argo CD, was the learning path, right? The learning curve is very it's not steep at all, right? So it's easy to use, it's easy to get started, but then it's kind of like learning, like see back here, it's kind of like learning the guitar, right? Like getting started is actually pretty easy. You're like, hey, like I can play a few chords, but if you want that mastery, it's there for you as well, right? So it's flexible. So I kind of like equate that to why I liked Argo so much, is that to get started, it was really, really simple, and it sounds like by design that's how it was. To onboard, you had thousands and thousands of engineers. You didn't want to bog them down with all the infrastructure stuff or all the delivery stuff. You just want them to be able to code rapidly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a little bit of we took care a lot about easy getting started experience, because we learned few lessons when we were at Applatix the hard way. Basically, I think it's just crucial. Unless you make it easy to use, it's extremely difficult to promote a project in open source, because there is a lot of competition, and that's what
The point of entry is important, definitely. That's
Yeah,
definitely true.
forcing engineers to use something they don't want to use is not a good recipe for success. Even internally, when you can like they point to their whole arm like hand like they did when it was in the army, but this even if you can do that and kind of volunteer people and force them to use something, that's not going to bring you a lot of happy engineers. But as as we open source this and wanted to get it out in the community, it's even more important because then people have a lot more choice, and if they don't like it, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, X.
Since we're talking about the history, I think it's nice to mention that. So yes, we started at Intuit and we open sourced, and obviously the project that was just created not necessarily has a ton of users, and Intuit was kind of a driver of features for a long time. But I guess maybe after 1 year of development, it flipped. And till now, I think open source community kind of way ahead of, the users in open source actually even moving even faster, and they bring more ideas than Intuit. And it's kind of, it helped us a lot. I guess that's where open sourcing pays off. Yeah. And
actually it's funny, like as engineers, right? Like you write something, I know I have a couple of pet projects. You write something and you think it's useful and you're like, okay, it's cool. And then like you show it to other people and then they have ideas. You're like, whoa, I would have never thought of that. Like if someone like, or like even in like, internally in your internal team, you guys have your own needs. But when you open source something, when you show it to other people, those ideas start coming. You're like, well, you know what? That's a really good idea. I never would have thought of that myself. It's a great use case. So that's there's actually a question here. If you guys are open to taking questions,
sure. Go ahead.
There is actually talking about the history, right? So this is from Washari, one of our regular viewers, right? So welcome. He says he asks, since we're getting a history lesson here, what would you do differently today? In other words, what are you struggling with Argo CD today? And what are the current pain areas that you see?
Yes, I think one thing what I would change is that we were too focused on, this kind of multi-tenancy use case, and we kind of, so what we did wrong in the beginning, and we're still trying to improve it, and we keep doing it. Basically, Argo CD was a tool that helped manage applications declaratively, but itself it was managed imperatively only. And that was something community pointed us to. They told us like, how come you have to click buttons to configure Argo CD as opposed to use Argo CD to manage itself? I think we improved a lot, and we keep doing it. Like kind of getting to a perfect state where you actually all you can do is to make file changes in Git, and this way you can configure Argo CD. Yeah, and I think this has been improved a lot recently. Yeah, but it would be much easier to get to this state if we started from this mindset.
Nice. Yeah. I actually, funny that you mentioned that, Alex, because I actually, a lot of people have actually been solving that problem with like Helm, right? Because I've written Helm charts to deploy Argo CD, but essentially you need that day zero thing, right? So basically it instantiates Argo CD, and then I just apply the manifest that Argo CD uses to then, kind of that's like my entry point. But it's good to hear that, those you're making those incremental changes to make it more declarative. And then before I get to my next question, this next question is actually for me. So, but I'll say it out loud. This has nothing to do with you guys because you guys support this easy. Is that why does Red Hat doesn't support Dex out of the box? So actually,
I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, exactly. So the Dex integration is actually there. You can use it. It's just we can't support the Dex image itself, right? So you can't pick up the phone and call Red Hat if something with Dex breaks. So you have to go upstream. So we can't officially say we support it, but it actually works, right? It's just Argo CD. Argo CD that 100% works with Dex. That's I think the primary. Or I think you do have a OIDC connector directly. I think, but you can use Dex as well to broker that as well. But But yeah, so that's the answer. We can't officially support it, but it's there for you to use. You just can't call Red Hat for support. So
just going back to your last question, I think what we would have done differently. I think one thing that we've noticed is that it was almost a little bit of a victim of our own success, because Argo, between the 4 projects, have been growing very quickly here since the inception, and we spent a lot of time with the community, helping the community. Been a lot of companies that reached out, we've done a lot of one-on-ones with various companies, helping them with various things. And Red Hat, we're really excited about partnering with Red Hat and Red Hat stepping up and helping out and doing a lot of good work with Argo. And I think that's one of the things that we maybe should have done earlier, just try and do more partnering and getting more other companies to come in and help out as well, because it was starting to strain our resources just with all the support and all the external work that we did, not necessarily feature building, but just answering questions and doing just random things like that. And I think that's a really important part of growing the community. You just can't do it by yourself. So I think that's something that maybe could have started even earlier. But other than that, I think we had a good run so far. So
yeah, it's funny how open source. So now I'm going to talk about open source because Red Hat, right? So I'm kind of a big proponent. But open source in the past has been was seen like as more of a hobbyist thing, right? More of like educational, more the universities are using it. And now it's more like a strategic advantage, right? Like you see companies like Microsoft, right? Like Apple, Intuit, like going into the open source space and saying, hey, like this is a valuable way to improve our software and make those have those contributions upstream is now it's seen like, oh, like this is a strategic move that we're making in our company. So I think that's a good point that you bring up, Henrik.
And it's an excellent way of developing software. I mean, I've been a Linux user since the mid 90s, right? And seeing how that community and that software has evolved. I'm a big believer in open source, and it's really good to be at Intuit and seeing how much energy and how positive the whole management chain is about open source. And we don't monetize it. We do it, like I said, to build a good product and to work with the community. So it's I think it's a really good way of developing software.
And I wanted to just second Henrik and say that yes, I wish we start trying to partner earlier, and I think we would be moving much quicker right now. And we're still trying to, basically what we're trying to do is we want to remove bottlenecks and share responsibilities and give more freedom to contributors. We don't want them to wait for pull requests to be merged for several days. We want to have separate owners who completely own a part of the project, and this way we can move in parallel instead of going from PR to PR sequentially.
Cool. Yeah, and in as far as you guys using Argo CD or it's advantageous, right, to software development. You guys have Argo CD, you guys have all these internal users. Can you I know, Henrik, you talk about you may have a few slides for us, but can you talk a little bit about how Argo, not just necessarily Argo CD, but just like the Argo project, how you guys are using that software in Intuit?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to talk about the details of the dev portal and MSaaS better than I do, Alex. I'm not sure if you want to start off with that, and I can fill out with some more numbers and data.
Yeah, sure, I can. And I didn't prepare for that, and I do not have slides, but I think I can talk about it. I guess I would have to start from Kubernetes itself. I guess it's even more important.
Yeah. Well, it always starts with Kubernetes, right? I think like cloud native. It's like, well, tell us your story. Well, it started with Kubernetes, right? So I think that's the seed for everyone, right?
Yeah, I guess Argo really benefited into it is that we have a solid platform, and basically we do not ask teams to spin up their own Kubernetes clusters. So we have the part of MSaaS. As part of MSaaS, we have team okay, the name is IKS, and basically it stands for, I think, Intuit Kubernetes Service. And the idea is that we basically let users create clusters by just clicking a button. And we have a strategy of how many clusters we're supposed to have. So basically, through experiments, we learned that Kubernetes, I guess, Kubernetes is not yet ready to serve the whole company. You must have several clusters. And I think average cluster into it is around 400 nodes. And this is working well. If you go, beyond that, maybe you will start facing some scalability challenges. So yeah, and that means in a company like Intuit, you must have a lot of clusters. And so you need some way to manage those clusters. And basically, we have a internal product that let you create clusters, and then the product will take care of maintenance of those clusters. Basically, it will took care of upgrades. It will rotate AMIs if there is any security fixes and so on. And that was huge advantage for all users, because if you use just the cloud, like just AWS, basically you're responsible for security upgrades and so on. So Kubernetes abstracted away at least this complexity. And then the next thing Intuit did is that we basically do not even let developers, we don't force them to create namespaces. That same product that creates clusters also create namespaces. So to summarize, I think we kind of have namespace as a service thing. So you can click a button and you don't give a name of your namespace, you just explain what you want to do. And you're supposed to say that, hey, I'm going to deploy a web service. I'm in the business unit ABC, and I'm part of subgroup of that unit, something, and you will get a namespace which has a meaningful, predictable name in a right cluster. And so for end users, for developers, it looks like, not like Heroku, but kind of they speak, business terms. They explain to the platform that they want to run application to serve some business goal, and that will create namespace in the right place. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
And not
really
only
cool.
that, I mean, the developer portal that Alex mentioned, and where you're going in click to start something. In addition to the namespaces, it also creates a Jenkins pipeline, creates a fold in Artifactory, creates 3 repositories in Git, and basically sets up your whole environment. Deploys it example service, so it's super easy to get started. And basically, it links in Jira and Wavefront, the other things that we're using. So basically, in that portal, you do click, and then you get basically everything set up for you, creating the namespaces and everything else you need to basically start deploying, writing a code right away.
Yeah, and so I would say we have kind of 2, user-facing applications. One is that the dev portal that 3 of them. One is the dev portal that tries to, integrate all the tools in one place, and this is what I think developers use the most. Next tool is Argo CD, and this is the tool to troubleshoot your application in Kubernetes. And the third one is the tool that manages namespace creation and cluster creation. And this tool, I think, mostly for the platform team. And I'm pretty sure mostly platform team uses it to manage, I think, around almost 300 to 400 clusters at Intuit. Yeah, and developers, I think we basically want developers to never use any of these tools, except you create the project once in the dev portal, and hopefully you never need them again. But if something doesn't go right, and let's say your application crashing in production, then they would go to Argo CD and try to troubleshoot it and figure out what's going on. And as I mentioned, they do not actually have to configure anything. They don't manage Argo CD configuration. It's all kind of abstracted away by dev portal.
Yeah, I could just share some numbers. So since we started going into that here, what scale roughly we're using. So since every application basically gets its own namespace, we're looking at about 11,000 applications and about as many namespaces here at Intuit. And I think we're probably getting closer to 400 clusters in total. Some of the production ones, like Alex said, are getting up there, hundreds of nodes, and we have a total of somewhere between 15 and 16,000 nodes in total. But there are a lot of the smaller ones as well. So in total, we have about somewhere between 375 and 400 clusters serving our 5,000 developers. So one thing that we measure that we look at is the release velocity, and checking how many releases the engineers do per week. So that's a measure of looking at how fast they can push out new releases, and using that as not necessarily as a strict goal in itself, but it's if you look at it historically, you can see that at least the release velocity going up, and use that as a comparative number, how fast we can move, and adding things like Argo, adding things that rollouts with canary analysis and things like that helps us increase that release velocity. So that's why we think that's an important number. And you see here, cumulative applications are like in 3 years, it's basically gone from 0 up to 11,000. It's accelerating more and more.
Rapid.
Basically.
Yeah, rapidly.
Both, exactly. Both because we're onboarding more developers, but the developers we have are also releasing faster because we're increasing our release velocity. So we have more developers, we're increasing their velocity. So it's like a double whammy, which means that everything is growing just faster and faster.
Yeah, what I really like about by the way, that's really impressive, right? Going, that trajectory going up into the right really, really rapidly. But what I really like about that slide is it is something that I'm going to show internally to Red Hatters here, because some of our consultants, some of our architects, solution architects were like, look, because we're Red Hat, we're a reseller, right? We sell software there. We get customers. As our field would ask, like, our customers are worried about if Argo can scale, and it's like I think that slide shows that it absolutely does scale, and I don't think your 5 clusters is going to be a problem for Argo CD. So I love that slide. I love seeing how you quickly onboarded developers and engineers just by introducing these tools that are meant to get the platform out of their way. So from what I'm hearing is that all these tools that are being built, your Kubernetes as a service sort of thing, Argo CD, those automation that you're building around is really just kind of just removing the walls of getting the platform out of the way of developers.
Yeah, I think
automating all the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about scalability, because I feel like it's still not fair to say that Argo CD can scale indefinitely. Yes, we do have some things, but I think it's like a primary focus of pretty much every release. Like nowadays, in every release we deploy, we not deploy, we improve things, and I think so don't worry that Argo CD is in the maintenance mode, not getting new features. It's like not true at all. Basically, the scalability and performance is maybe the most important topic in every Argo CD release.
Actually, speaking of scale, there's actually a few questions. There's 2 questions that came down. I'm going to glom them together. I'm going to ask them as one question, right? So they're asking about Argo CD HA, right? So in terms of HA, but actually more specifically, how many instances of Argo CD does it take to run at that scale? So, a lot of people talk about Argo CD HA, and from my experience of using Argo CD, it's less about HA and more about running instances of Argo CD. But I'll let you guys kind of describe the scale of how you're using Argo CD.
Yeah. So at Intuit, we have several. We have an instance of Argo CD per segment, and segment is a part of BU. And it was not done this way for performance reasons. It was mostly for, to limit the blast radius. Basically, that was like a business requirement. I don't know who, VPs of a company, they wanted to make sure they are isolated from each other. And I think it makes sense. And that's why I think we ended up having 36 Argo CD instances, and some of them, like clusters, some of them bigger, some of them smaller. I think the biggest one manages close to 3,000 applications. Yeah, and it's like one of the biggest instances we have. Plus, we have one instance that we use internally to manage add-ons in all Intuit clusters. So it manages a slice of a cluster, but across the whole Intuit, in basically a small slice in each and every cluster. And I think and we pretty much use that instance to to challenge Argo CD, and basically getting more and more pressure. Like new clusters got created, and I feel bad every time when I have to bump resources, and it forces the team to work on optimization instead of adding resource. So, and even if we get to that, I will share what we did in that release. So I think we had a couple good improvements for performance and scalability.
But yeah,
Cool.
so I think about like Alex said, I think about the largest instance, if we compared to the numbers I just showed, I think about a quarter of the applications are on that instance in terms of scale. That's it's fairly sizable. And another thing in terms of scale, that we get asked about quite a lot is when you talk about GitOps, not necessarily Argo CD per se, is the number of repositories. It's such a pain. You get too many repositories in Git. Managing that is a hassle. Like I said, we give developers 3 repositories per application. So I mean, you can do the math on how many repositories we have. I mean, it's a fairly large number, and we don't really have any main headaches or concerns about managing that because it's all automated in our platform. Alex, who's closer to managing that, might have a slightly different opinion.
Argo CD kind of takes advantage of number of repositories because it's a natural way for us to kind of share the load. And Argo CD has problems if you in Monorepo, and that was a challenge for us because we didn't have a case of Monorepo. And then recently we get to the same, basically we now have it, and we think in last 2 releases we had to rework some of Argo CD parts to support Monorepo case. And just to clarify, Monorepo is it's a scenario when you have one repository with hundreds of applications in that repository. Yeah, and it didn't have the perfect support. Now it got much better.
Yeah. I'm actually a fan of the poly repo, right? Like having a few repos.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not like it's like the best way. It's just like a way of doing it.
Yeah, there are two different ways to manage
completely different. Yeah, 2 completely different use cases. So it's good to hear that you're writing more support or better support for that, or at least in terms of scale. Right. And
it's one of those things you run into, when you start getting it out there in the community. Like we don't use it, so we didn't really much consider that use case. And then you get it out to a larger audience, and then suddenly, hey, yeah, these guys are doing something different that we're not doing. So it's and all that helps improve the project and the product, right? So it's all good.
So you guys had this need. And you guys are building all these tools. So, how does that relate into? So, let me ask this question a different way. As I was asking the question, I found a different way of asking it. How into GitOps is Intuit, or was it GitOps something you're like, oh, interesting that these people are the users now are using Argo CD for GitOps? Was it surprising, or was that always like an end goal of having Argo CD be a delivery mechanism for the whole GitOps practice, or was it just a byproduct?
It was GitOps from the beginning. It's
from
like
we
realized that. I think that the reason we chose it is because we didn't want to build things that you get for free from GitOps. We didn't want to introduce a database with history of changes, because it's pain to run and pain to develop. So we realized, and we learned from basically before we started building Argo CD. Yes, we looked at what existed already, and I think the biggest we had 2 other candidates. One was Spinnaker and one was Flux. So Spinnaker is not GitOps, and we didn't. I shouldn't say like it, but basically we didn't think it's the best fit because Spinnaker was proposing to introduce abstraction on top of Kubernetes, which is itself abstraction. We didn't like that. We didn't want to have abstraction on top of abstraction, and we learned that it's really difficult to, basically Kubernetes is changing a lot, and that means we didn't want to abstract away Kubernetes from developers. That was one kind of thing. And another one, so we really like approach that implemented by Flux, but we could not just go ahead and use it because Flux was kind of, it didn't have a model to serve a lot of teams without asking them to know Kubernetes already. And that's why we kind of had to combine two together, and Argo CD was created. So, and yes, it was GitOps from beginning.
Yeah. Okay, so from the GitOps was essentially you built the tool with GitOps in mind.
Exactly. Yeah, we pretty much we consciously decided that we want to build GitOps as a service, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about GitOps, but maybe I'm simplifying it. But in my mind, GitOps, it tightly coupled with Kubernetes. It's maybe not the most popular opinion, but I think idea of storing manifests or some declarative definition in Git, an automated way to apply it, it existed forever, but it's just extremely hard to do. It's not easy. It's easier to say, but difficult to implement. And then Kubernetes got created, and it kind of made that problem trivial. Now with Kubernetes, without any other tools, you just have kubectl commands, diff and apply, and it will do exactly the same work, except it's not super convenient. And that's what we realized, and we just decided that it makes sense to build an application that does kubectl apply, kubectl diff for you, but makes it, convenient and easy to use, right? And that's what pretty much Argo CD. It's I know that our product managers do not like the definition, but we kind of sometimes call Argo CD glorified kubectl apply.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Yes. And it has, it's, as I said, easier to, if you try to repeat it manually, you will have to go through a long journey. So Argo CD brings some advantages to the table.
Yeah, it's and also what's really cool about Argo just also is you guys were talking about the UI. I think you guys inadvertently created a great developer UI without even trying with Argo CD, right? Is you needed a way to visualize it, and it's actually a good UI, for from the application side at least, for Kubernetes. So that was another. I actually like using the Argo CD UI versus like using something like Octant or even the OpenShift UI, right? I'll flip back and forth because I'm like, I want to see a representation of my app, not necessarily its individual components. So that's just another thing that was really cool about Argo CD.
Yeah, I can share some other thoughts about UI. It's kind of slippery slope. We didn't want to transform Argo CD into Kubernetes dashboard because it's not the main focus. That what we're thinking about adding in the future is that if we already have to collect the data to do GitOps, and we just have it, it's worth showing it because it's so cheap. We just need to build UI to show it. Let's say if we need to build something to start collecting the data, then maybe no. And one example is that, for example, we could start collecting metrics within Kubernetes and just pulling the metrics to show to the user, information about CPU usage, memory usage in UI. But I think it's too much. It's kind of, maybe we could let Grafana and Prometheus do it, and instead of
Well, yeah, it's because Argo CD for the most part is stateless, right? Like you just use etcd. You just use etcd essentially on the back end. But when you deploy Argo CD, it's just Redis cache and then the controllers really, and then because the idea is everything should be stored in Git anyway. So I should be able to spin up another Argo CD and apply those manifests, and I just get my app back. So there's not really anything to store.
Yeah.
which makes it lightweight, right? So there's
and then
here.
and that's something that I know that a lot of users we talk to, they like about all the 4 Argo projects, that they're not trying to be everything. You know, they're building blocks, and you can take Argo CD, Argo rollouts, Argo workflows, events, and put together, use them individually, put them together, and build whatever platform, whatever your needs happen to be out of that. But we're not trying to combine all the 4 projects into one monolith, or like Alex said, try to do too much monitoring, and like just trying to do what makes sense without getting too big and bloated, keeping them as building blocks.
Yeah, we actually got some questions here. Let me see if I can try to glom some of it, because there's a few of them that came down. Try to so someone asked, there's things like sync waves and hooks. Are there any plans for any other modular tasks, for example, like pipeline abstracts, or any other edge use cases, right? So for example, right, so sync waves was there because stateful applications sometimes just need an order, right? You can't just apply things all at once. So are there any other like edge use cases that you guys are looking at in order to incorporate into Argo CD?
I think we keep trying to solve that problem of managing Argo CD itself. So basically, I think we think that more or less we feature complete in terms of syncing resources within applications, but we keep getting questions about how do you orchestrate syncing of multiple applications at the same time? What if you have such a big application, so it kind of consists of independent blocks? And this, we don't have a good answer. We come up with a kind of pattern. So you can create Argo CD application that create applications, and then you can try to use sync waves to orchestrate, syncing of applications in a particular order. And that's just too complex. Like, we feel like first class support is needed to support that use case. And we started with Red Hat to build application set project. So application set help you create applications. And basically that really, like, to give a concrete example, let's say you have, let's say you need to create the exact same set of resources in each and every cluster. So in Argo CD world, you would have to create application per cluster. And that's a lot of manual work. With application set, you can create a single resource that describe what kind of application you want to create in each and every cluster, and it will do it for you. And I guess the next step is to add more either into Argo CD itself or into our application set, add some features that let you define how you want to sync all these applications. You might split them into waves. You might say, I want to sync all of my staging applications first, then wait, and then maybe sync all production applications, but do some kind of, a form of canary deployment of your changes. And you can, split your production clusters even into waves, like listen.
Yeah. Actually, I was one of those voices, right? So I know that our engineers Red Hat engineers worked on application sets, and like the first thing I asked is like, it'd be really cool if I could do waves with application sets. So treat applications as almost like a components, right? Like how you treat objects. So in Argo CD application, there's objects that the application sits under. Now I almost want to treat the application the same way as I would like a deployment, right? I want to be able to, deploy the first application, and then using, application sets, then deploy the second one, and then have a kind of like the wave or like a canary, like you said. That's really cool, and that's something. Again, like you release something, and it's like all these people have all these ideas. It's like, well, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that with application sets, and it's just like another one of those cases where you had a simple use case, and all of a sudden there's all these ideas that pop out of that.
Yeah. And it's on the roadmap. So we're kind of moving step by step, and eventually I'm pretty sure Argo CD will get that feature.
Really cool. See here. So someone actually asked about patching deployment, but I'll actually replace that question with my question, Alex. I asked this question right before we went live, but there is a applying manifests using kubectl, there's like some ramifications about just using apply that actually people don't know about. There are actually some weird use cases that happen, like when you apply versus replace versus. So can you kind of go through a little bit how the first explain what the three-way diff does in Argo CD? So there's something called the three-way diff for those who don't know. What it is, and then how it's used in order to keep the desired state and then the running state in sync.
Yeah. And just to kind of clarify, I think we did not invent three-way diff. It's in Kubernetes. This is the way Kubernetes offer developers to manage resources. And the idea is that you can have a file, doesn't matter where, in Git or just on your laptop, and that file has the YAML or JSON that it kind of explains what you want to have in a cluster. You can also have that same resource exist in a cluster already. And at the same time, as part of that resource, you can have the third state, which represents what did you want to have last time. So just to clarify, let's say today you want to create a deployment. You would create a file and then kubectl apply that file, and it will create the resource. And that resource will have a notation that kind of has data about what you meant to have in a cluster. And then tomorrow, some developer go and change an image, for example, without you knowing. And then you can run kubectl diff, and you can feed the file stored on your disk. And basically what will happen is that kubectl will try to compare what you meant to have last time, what you meant to have, what you want to have now, and what you really have. And it will show you, it will catch the difference. And this let you catch, for example, you might want to just don't specify. Yeah, I'm trying to explain why is it so complex? Why don't just just compare two states? So there are edge cases. Like, for example, let's say you don't care how many replica sets you need to have on your deployment because you have HPA and HPA manages it for you. So in this case, you can simply don't specify number of replicas in your file stored in Git. And that it will basically add some flexibility, and that particular field can be managed imperatively. But let's say you change your mind and you can introduce that field in a new version of your application, and then Argo CD or kubectl, it will notice that you actually want to manage that field, and it will show up in a diff if the field is not what you want. Or maybe like another example, let's say you used to manage number of replicas in Git and you want to switch to HPA. If you delete that field from Git, it is still stored in the annotation that stores your previous intention. I know it's complex, but basically,
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, you have kind of so Kubernetes basically store the set of fields that you wanted to specify last time, and if you change your mind, it will compare what you want to do today, what you really have, and what did you want last time, and that gives enough information about the change, like what exactly you want to change, and that change can be replacing old value with the new value, or removing something that used to be managed. And and this it's complex. I had to wrap my head around it. And basically, Argo CD kind of uses exact same logic as kubectl uses. And that's important because if suddenly Argo CD, I don't know, crashed and doesn't work, you can just keep managing your application using kubectl. We're trying to make it compatible with kubectl. Kubectl has some features. For example, you can apply a folder of manifests. Plus, you can specify a label, and you could say, okay, I want to apply all the manifests, and I know that all manifests of my application labeled with some label, and this way you can detect resources that were deleted from Git that no longer used by that no longer managed in Git, and that's a feature of kubectl. And basically, Argo CD is trying to make it as easy as possible to switch to kubectl. It also applies similar labels, and
Again, Yeah. Again, you're saying what something that Henrik doesn't want you to say is it's like kubectl. It's like a glorified kubectl. Well, I think also a perfect example of the three-way diff is that someone can. So let's say you have a deployment, and you do on the command line, you do a kubectl patch of the actual container section, which is an array, by the way, to change that image. When you run Argo CD sync, it'll take into account that last applied, right? Which you change the container image to something else, and then your desired, and then all of a sudden you'll have two containers in the deployment, and it'll always be out of sync, only because it does an apply, meaning that it'll append to that array of containers versus replacing it. Because you've applied it, right? So it'll take that into account, because it's an apply, not a replace. That Argo CD can do a replace, by the way. You just have to be careful with it, because if you have stateful applications with PVs, it'll delete the PV, right? When you delete the resource, so you have to be a little careful.
But I think as a kind of, if you want to learn more about declarative management of resources using Argo CD, you can as well just read official Kubernetes documentation, and it's one-to-one mapping. Argo CD uses exact same tools. We used to even just fork exec kubectl under the hood, to get the diff and to apply changes. And just for performance reasons, we switched to a library which is part of kubectl. So Kubernetes community refactored kubectl, and they converted parts into a library, and that's why we could just take advantage of it. We import code which is used by kubectl, and then execute that code to make it quicker. So yeah.
Which is actually part of the reason why Argo CD is so easy to use. It stays true to the platform, right? It stays really close to the Kubernetes platform. So we have like about 10 minutes left. I want to give the floor to either you, Alex, or Henrik, whatever you guys want to talk about for the last 10 minutes. You guys, Henrik, I don't know if you want to talk about roadmap. You want to talk about what you guys are doing. It's free talk from here on out in the last few moments of the hour.
Yeah, we can talk about anything, really. I mean, that's why we're here. Yeah. Yeah. So on the roadmap side, I guess the two parts of that really. There's one, we're working with the community, like our partners like Red Hat and the community to build out features for the Argo project. And I think like Alex said, in some ways we're covering our use cases for the most part now that we're doing it into it. So the more input we can get from y'all that are listening to this, what your use cases are, that would help tremendously in shaping the future roadmap of Argo CD. And what we're doing internally now also is we're focusing a lot also on Argo rollouts, and that's kind of a little bit of a missing key still in our progressive delivery strategy and how we do progressive delivery into it is getting to a point where it's all fully using Argo rollouts with canary analysis and making sure that we have the full progressive delivery process and end-to-end automated. So we're looking at rollouts as well, and there's some cool things that are being worked on how to. And we know that there are a lot of people that use rollouts together with Argo CD. So there's some work that's being done on how to get them more close together without building that monolith. As I said before, there's like an extension framework that's being worked on where we can basically pull in anything and show it in CD, but we're using rollouts as one of the first examples of that. Just getting the parts together without breaking that building block strategy. So I think that's, and I remember we did the user survey a few months ago, external user survey for Argo CD. There was a lot of the people who responded are looking at use of Argo rollouts. So I know that's definitely one of the things we're looking at, how we bring those two more closely together. Internal, we also have some other projects we're working on that are still being validated, but they're both around GitOps and Argo CD, and on the workflow side, that we're looking at open sourcing here later this year. So there's a lot of interesting additional stuff coming out there that's Argo related as well, but still a little bit too early to go into details there, but hopefully come as we're getting closer to KubeCon, we're hoping to share some more of that stuff as well.
And since we're talking about features,
yeah,
go ahead, sir.
Go. No, go ahead. I was just going to talk about KubeCon, so I'll let you talk first, and then I'll talk about KubeCon.
I won't take all 5 minutes, but I just wanted to use a chance to market a little bit one new feature that I'm passionate about. So as we mentioned, Argo CD kind of shines when you need to serve needs of multiple teams, and you have a platform team that manages Argo CD and everyone else uses it. At the same time, we heard some feedback from users who have no, they have no such need. They don't need to serve needs of many other teams. They just want to have a tool that manage, resources in the cluster, and they basically just want to run and use it. And for these users, some features of Argo CD like DEX, SSO, RBAC, they view it as a unnecessary set of features. Like they don't like them. Like, why do you have to configure admin if you are already admin? Like you have Kubernetes RBAC that protects your cluster. Why do you have to set up one more protection? And so that this is we're trying to improve it. And very likely in this release, we're going to have kind of a new way of like a new distribution of Argo CD. You can install it, and it won't have any of multi-tenancy features. Basically, it will have just a backend part and no API server. And that's why the code name of the feature is Headless Argo CD. The name might change. We don't really like it, but yeah. But basically, you can run Headless Argo CD, and we just took all existing features of a client, the web UI and the CLI part, and kind of packaged it into the client-facing CLI. So you basically it's the same experience, but you don't have API service. And all you have to have, you just need to have Kubernetes access. Basically, you need to, your kubectl should work locally on your laptop. And you can run Argo CD dashboard command, for example, and it starts UI locally. Or you can just execute all the CLI commands as usual, but it won't try to talk to API server. It will talk directly to Kubernetes. And I'm really excited about that feature. And I think it will be interesting for Kubernetes admins who wants to just Kubernetes clusters.
And coming from a telco background, I can kind of see how this lighter weight Argo that's more isolated for a single small cluster could be very useful for like IoT or telco use cases. So it'd be really interesting, to obviously at Intuit, we're not going to roll out 5G. But it would be really interesting to hear from the user community as well. And if you have anyone that has IoT use cases or telco use cases, to ping us. And I think this I'll do air quotes headless Argo, I think has some really good promises as well, and some opening up some new use cases that we haven't been able really to solve with Argo before.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep we'll definitely talk about a new name, I guess, eventually. I guess we'll talk about helmetless Argo. I don't know how you would write the logo, the same Argonaut, but without the helmet. I'm not sure. Cool. Yeah. So we're just about done with time. I am going to talk about KubeCon a little bit, right? So KubeCon is just around the corner. We're actually the GitOps working group. We are putting up GitOps Con again, right? And so armless Argo, that's just funny. Anyways, someone wrote in chat, we're running a GitOps Con, right? CFP is open. This is gonna be a hybrid event, right? So if you can't come to Los Angeles, right? I have, if you are and don't need a hotel, I have a room here since I'm in LA. But if you can't come to LA, there will be a virtual part of it, right? So don't think you can't submit a CFP. I put the CFP in the chat here on Twitch, so go ahead and check that out. CFPs close not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So get those in. So with that, I just want to thank you, Henrik, Alex. Thank you for sitting here chatting with us, putting up with all my Argo CD questions.
And I haven't made reservations yet for KubeCon. So do you take reservation for that spare room?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, exactly. It includes breakfast too. So I'll even have a continental breakfast there. It's just like a Marriott.
Nice. And also, if you have a few seconds, I'd also like to plug. There's actually going to be an ArgoCon in December.
Yep.
So so I just want to get that out as well. There'll be a single day event in San Francisco on December 8th. So program is still CFP is open. Program is still being put together, but for those of you that are in the area or can travel for a single day event, we'll have that The website is open, the registration is open. So if you want to learn more about Argo, that will be a great time to come and hang out with us, learn more about Argo.
Definitely, I'll be there. Right, I'm in LA. It's a short flight for me, and I love the Bay Area. So, great food. So, I'm
driving now, so you'll probably get it faster than I will.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Cool. So so thank you everyone for joining again. Thank you, Henrik, Alexander. And actually, congratulations, Bobby. By the way, our intern ran this whole show for us. It's a solo. So he's behind the scenes. So everyone wave at Bobby. And yeah, thank you. You can see us out, Bobby. Thanks. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure.